All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another insightful episode of the Resilient Immigrant Knowledge is Power series. At Resilient Immigrant, our mission is to empower, encourage, and evolve the lives of immigrants through knowledge sharing, professional development, and storytelling. Today, we're diving into a very important topic, and it's a topic that is extremely sensitive, and it's maintaining mental wellness as an immigrant. And we're honored to have these incredible individuals with us today who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in this topic. They'll be sharing their experiences, tips, insights, and discussing challenges and how to navigate those challenges that immigrants face on their immigrant journey. And so, without further ado, I'm just going to turn it to them so they can introduce themselves. All right, Dina, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Dina Coughlin. I am a mental health advocate, and I am an advocate because I'm excited to be here and share my experience.
All right, thank you so much, Dina, and welcome. And Nimoma.
Hi, everyone. I'm Namoma Chukwumerija. I am a licensed social worker. I am a personal empowerment coach and a breathwork facilitator, which is a form of meditation. So, very happy to be here this evening, too.
Awesome. And so, before we even dive into this topic, I want us to first of all unpack what it means, what mental wellness means, because there's a lot of misconception out there. So, what is mental wellness? Let's start with that.
I can go first. So, I would define mental wellness as, of course, being mentally well. But when we think about our holistic wellness, you have your physical that people put a lot of attention and effort into. And then you have how is your mind functioning? How is your emotional processing? How is your spiritual wellness? All of this goes into being mentally well and how you're showing up on a day to day basis for yourself and for others, too.
Awesome. I love that. Dina, how about you?
I think that was a great explanation. I was going to actually use that same word, the holistic approach. Holistic in the sense that it encompasses your physical and your mental health, encompasses your entire health. It's not one apart from the other. I think it's working on both and acknowledging both, and paying attention to not a physical side of things, but knowing that the mental impacts the physical. So yes, definitely.
Okay. All right. So let's dive into the nitty gritty of it. So it's mental wellness for immigrants. And so, first of all, I know that both of you are not immigrants. So I'm the immigrant. And firsthand, I've been there, I've done that, I've experienced all the different challenges that immigrants face. The first one I want to, really what I want us to talk about is around navigating cultural changes. So that's the first thing. So an immigrant leaves their family, leaves their culture, comes to a brand new country. Everything is foreign. The language is foreign. The people are foreign. The way of life is foreign. And it's like, um, how do they even start to process those things? And when difficulties and challenges come, because they will, and the immigrant is feeling depressed and down, how do they navigate those kind of situations?
I can start.
Yeah.
I think that's a great question. We spoke last night, sort of in our show prep, about the fact that even when you are an immigrant and then you're trying to reach back to family, the time zones are different, and it's nighttime there, it's daytime here. You just can't. I think one of the first things that I think is crucial to any mental wellness is building a sense of community. I think
Mm-hmm.
come to, especially as an immigrant, when you come to a foreign land, it empowers you to find other people who are in the same journey that you are in. And I think building that community is going to be sort of intrinsic to your transition, and
Mm-hmm.
also going to help you through the hard times. So the first step I would say would be trying to build a community.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's great. That's great advice. However, I've experienced situations where people don't find it easy to build a community,
Mhm.
right? There are situations where you migrate and maybe you go to a place where you don't have a lot of people like you, or you're just not someone who's an extrovert. So it's difficult for you to actually um, meet people and just make new friends? What do you do in those situations?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. There's an initial aspect of firstly coming to terms with being in a new place, understanding that things are going to be different. I have to come out of myself, come out of my shell in a way to be able to adjust in this environment. So for those who are introverts initially, there's a bit of putting yourself out there that will need to happen because the isolation can be very detrimental to the mental health. And I know that some people are moving to places that, like you mentioned, there may not be people who look like you around there, or even if there are people maybe of your complexion, they may not be your
Mhm.
same cultural background. It doesn't mean
Yes.
that you necessarily fit in with them. But I would encourage those listening to expand yourself a little bit in terms of who you may possibly connect with.
Mhm.
There could be people of different backgrounds that maybe you find in a church. If you're religious, it could be a mosque. It could be, there's a bunch of run clubs these days. You may not be a runner, but there are run clubs, there are social clubs, and places where you can learn a new skill and meet with new people and find out that, oh, we actually have way more in common than I would have previously thought. And you find yourself creating a found community, a found family, even if it's not your original group of people. So it takes a lot to get to that point, but you need to be intentional about, putting yourself out there to make that happen.
I
I would add,
absolutely
oh,
agree.
sorry.
No, no,
I,
go ahead.
I would add to that, yes, there's groups like there's meetups, there's all sorts of things based in whatever city you live in. So, absolutely
Mhm.
kind of embrace that. What my father always says, exposure therapy. So even when you're uncomfortable, you have to put yourself out there. And just even me as an individual, my default is to isolate when I'm
Mhm.
going into hard times. So if you're someone like me, and I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert, but it's my default mechanism, it's my coping mechanism. Virtual, something like this, even, or interactive virtual events. I would say those are
Yeah.
really.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's great. And as you guys were saying all of those things, I was trying to put myself in those shoes. And I tried, I personally, I know she it's bedtime, but she's here. Can you go to bed, please?
I'm hungry.
Okay, you're hungry. Can you go to the kitchen, please?
No, I can't be by myself there.
Oh my God. Nico, can you please go? I want to call. Thank you. Okay, I apologize. Sorry about that. Um, okay, so what was I saying? Yes. So I tried all of those things, right? I tried to meet new people, church. I tried to, join like various gyms and
Mm,
different clubs, but it didn't work out, And I feel for me, I was holding on too tight. I was holding on to my old friends, and when I meet new people, I'm looking for the characteristics that my friends had in these new people.
yeah.
And no two people are the same, right? So for me personally, I wasn't open-minded. I didn't have um lack of better words. I don't think I was ready to embrace the new culture, the new people, and so holding on. So it's like, and a lot of people do that. They're still holding on to like, oh, this is how I used to do things, whether it's friends or lifestyle or even their jobs, like, oh, I used to be this back home, I used to be a high flyer, and then now I'm starting from scratch, and those kind of things really do affect your mental,
Mhm.
right? Because it's like, who am I? Who am I now? I used to be this identity back home, and then right now I've migrated, and I'm a whole new, sort of less than myself, you know. And so depression comes in. You start feeling down. You start feeling angry. There's a lot of anger. You start feeling sorry for yourself. When those kind of challenges come, how do you navigate them? How do you still say, you know what, for myself, for my mental, I need to do blah blah blah, even though I know that this might not be the end of the road? How do you have that positive talk? How do you still encourage yourself even when you know you're in a really down place in your life?
I think the first step is really having the self-awareness or learning about what is happening with you. If we're thinking about the African community, for example, people coming from different countries on the African continent, talking about mental health or understanding that there are mental health issues is not a common thing. I'm a daughter of immigrants. Both of my parents came here from Nigeria. So I know very well that these are not topics that are talked about, right? And we don't acknowledge that there could be something going on. So I think the first step is starting to be aware of changes that may be happening within you and acknowledging that, yes, it's all of the things that are happening in terms of you moving to a new country, the job, maybe financial instability, lack of community, but then also some smaller things. You're moving to maybe a colder place. So the change in weather is going to affect and can contribute to depression. The change in food can contribute to it too. All these chemicals that are added to the food can contribute to the depression too. So that's like the very tiny first step of, let me notice for myself what may be shifting. And then the next steps after that come to, how can I seek help for what I'm feeling here? And I'll let Dina build off of that.
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's also so important to like have grace with yourself. You comment on how, I'm moving to a new country and now I'm starting from nothing. I'm nobody. Like, I don't even matter here. I'm a number, whatever. And I think it's just so important to talk to yourself in a way that is empowering, and that is just like, I need to give myself a break. I'm just starting. It's okay to start from. I'm like, almost like be the friend that you would want to call on the phone, but you have to be it for yourself. You have to be your own cheerleader. And I think it's also, really important to, like Namoma said, about having self-awareness. And self-awareness is like, checking in with yourself and creating the boundaries. And if you are reaching and it's hard for you to make friends because you're, I don't know, sad about leaving your old friends, maybe you just don't try to make friends. You just try to be around people who have similar interests with no expectation of anything, just not being alone. And maybe those are professional networks or activities that you like to do, not with the expectation that you're going to meet your best friend, but with the expectation that it's a night that you're not alone in your home by yourself.
Yeah, so something that you said really struck a nerve, right? So understanding and letting yourself know that it's okay. It's a journey. You're not going to get there overnight. It's going to eventually happen, baby steps. I think that's one of the main challenges that immigrants face, because a lot of immigrants, they migrate, most of them, majority migrate for a better life. And as soon as they come, they want a better life, right? And they still have family back home who's, you know, applying pressure. Like, okay, you're in a better place now, so you should start sending us money.
Right.
Your life should be automatically now better. And it doesn't work that way. So it's like, how then can they, with the pressure, how then can they handle that pressure? And also, even if they tell themselves, like, okay, I want, it's a gradual process, I'm taking baby steps, but the social pressure is still there, right? Why in a day and age of technology and social media, and everybody sees everything that you're doing, and it's like, how do you handle that social pressure? How do you handle the financial insecurity of wanting to just acquire all the wealth and um, everything that comes with the immigrant journey of being successful all at one time?
It's difficult because I think all of us, whether we're immigrants or not, do want to see us achieving the goals that we set out for ourselves. And we want to see it instantly. And it doesn't quite happen like that, right? I think there's multiple things to this. One, I know we talk about community a lot, but I want to really plug the resilient immigrant community here, because there are other people, even if it's going to be in an online forum, that you can connect to who are going through the same exact thing, that you can go ahead and let them know, my mom is asking again and again for this money and you feel obligated to support
Yeah.
your mom and your siblings. That is natural. That is the way, right? But there are people who can give you those specific tips who have been through it exactly. But there's also the mental fortitude is really necessary here. I think it's remembering where you came from, remembering that even to get to this country was not easy and was
Mm-hmm.
and took a lot of money saving, took a lot of prayer, took a lot of effort, and you made it through that time, right? And this next step in the journey, you will make it through that time, but it will also take a lot of incremental steps to get there. And I don't want to just cheerleader it and say, keep going, don't give up, you'll make it. It's true. And also be gentle with yourself, as Dina was saying, give yourself grace as the stumbling blocks will come,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't let yourself fall over those blocks. You have to keep going and allow yourself the grace to know that it will happen eventually. Because you made it here in the first place. So if you can do this, you can definitely get it to the next place.
Yeah. So I want to just go a little deeper, right? There are people who have migrated and are depressed.
Yeah.
They're depressed. They cry every single day because they miss home. They're frustrated because the weather is not what they're used to. So it's, a lot of people who migrate to like Canada or places that are extremely cold, have extremely cold weather. They're like, what is this? They've never experienced that level of cold before.
Yeah.
And it's so much frustration. Um, just everything coupled together. They work so hard. Immigrants work so hard, day and night. They're working. Whether it's to pay bills, whether it's to send back home to family, majority, a lot of them are truly depressed. And they don't know that they're depressed.
Mhm.
They feel depressed, but they don't know that they're depressed. And it's like, how do you treat what you don't know?
That's a great question. That's such a good question. I think even people, I would say even people in this country sometimes don't know, like, why am I crying all the time? Why are the
Mhm.
things that I used to love I don't love anymore? Like,
Exactly.
I do think we kind of, as a society as a whole don't always advocate for, people who have mental health diagnoses. I think it's changing,
Mhm.
which is great. But I think there's knowledge, the knowledge that you have about various diagnoses, it's so important. So I think it's important to like educate yourself, or when you're not feeling great to talk about it. I know
Mm.
you mentioned yesterday a lot of cultures, and it could be a cultural misunderstanding. It could be, there's so many different things. But a lot of cultures might say, well, you pray to God about that. That's not something you talk about a lot. That's personal. That's your prayers to God. And then you said something that was so great. Well, if God created people who can help you, then don't you think you should use those people? So I think part of what we're working on as a whole, as a society, is just erasing the stigma that surrounds being able to say, I'm actually not okay.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to talk to somebody. Like, I'm just not okay. I'm not myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to piggyback off that as well. I think there's so much shame that surrounds mental health issues, and we've been talking about depression, but then there's other layers, other levels to it of
Hmm.
mental health issues that may or may not be diagnosed: bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety, and much more. And what we don't realize is more people are actually experiencing this than we even know. But we may be thinking, I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one who can't get out of bed in the morning to be able to go to work. I'm the only one who has no energy to give to what I'm doing. But then, as Dina's saying, when you vocalize it, one, it may help you feel a little bit better, but it will also help you see that someone else is sharing the same experience. And you're not alone in this. And maybe somebody else has a resource that you don't have access to, but because you opened your mouth to say, this is what's happening for me, they're able to share that with you and help you get support if you're in a place where you're lost and you don't know where to go. So it's so
Yeah.
important to talk about
Yeah.
it.
So I'm hearing multiple things. I'm hearing you need to be self-aware. So when you start acting out of your usual, when you start acting out of your norm, you start crying, you start feeling sad. Maybe you used to be um, the life of the party before, and all of a sudden you just become overnight introvert. You don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to see anybody. You don't want to hang out. You need to start asking yourself questions. Am I okay? What is causing all of these changes? So I think that's, you guys just pointed out self-awareness. The second one is the denial. So I think that's also a huge part, because even some people know, like, okay, there's something wrong. I feel deep down in my heart, in my soul, that I'm not okay. I'm not happy. I'm putting up a facade. I'm putting up a smiley face. But if you lift that up, I have baggy eyes. I'm sad. You know, how can I really come to terms with the reality of things? How do you differentiate or move away from the denial because you're afraid of the stigma, or you're afraid to speak out, right? So how do you really come out from being in denial? A lot of people are actually in denial. They
Oh,
they lie to themselves.
well, I think there's also the shame component extends to the fact that we're not we're not being chased by killers. We go to bed, we have a roof over our head. I always hated the people who would well, what's wrong with you? There are people suffering in other countries. There are people who are hungry, and I would feel so guilty for something really that was out of my control. So I think one of the first aspects of the shame is just to come with the fact that, like, you feel like you should be grateful. So why am I not more grateful? But for me, I remember some of the symptoms that I started having prior to sort of a mental breakdown was just, things were darker. The thoughts were
Mm,
darker. The questioning of, do I really want to be here? Am I supposed to be here? What's my purpose? And once, at the time I was young, so the thoughts scared me so much I didn't want to talk about them, because this was 20 years ago and nobody wanted to talk about anything. But now I've actively been in therapy for many years, and I can self-check myself. Okay, this isn't going well. That isn't going well. And to the extent that things are not going well in my life, what am I in control of, and what can I change to make things better?
Yeah.
yeah.
Realize I do have to make money, I do have to pay bills, but if I don't love my job, is there another thing I can do to make money that makes me a little bit happier, a little less anxious, a little less, so like the things that are in my power that I can change that make it a little easier to breathe, let's do that. Let's change.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's also there are multiple things as well, right? So now if we move the denial part away, there's also the lack of vulnerability. A lot of people are not vulnerable enough to say there's something wrong, even if it's to a friend or to a family member, like, I don't feel okay. And, sometimes you might not be able to self-diagnose, but really just talking to someone might actually help. And they might say, you know what, maybe you need to see a therapist. Maybe you need to go, talk to someone, or, something of the sort. A lot of people put up that facade of they're strong and they're the ones who help other people,
Yeah.
right? But then who's helping you? A lot of people, because especially immigrants, they're literally like the lifesavers for their families who are back home, who the families are expecting them to, provide and send things, and so they feel like they have to be strong for everyone, right? And so it's like, where do you even start from? Like, what is so in trying to be aware of your mental health, what is the first thing you need to do? Do you need to see a doctor? Do you need to talk to a friend? Um, I'm really trying to understand, like, what is really the first thing to do?
Honestly, I don't think it's actually too complicated in terms of you don't need to diagnose yourself. You can trust yourself to know that you are the best keeper of who you are, meaning you know the days when you have more energy, you know the days when you are in a lighter mood, and you know the days that you are not. So I think it starts with taking some inventory from yourself. They have, if you wanted to use a mood tracker, they have apps that are like mood trackers to see how you're feeling over time. But if you're not at the place of even having the self-awareness to do that, it's just understanding where the slight shifts happening. I used to go out every Friday night with maybe friends that I had made in the community. I've stopped going out. Or what are the people around me saying? Are people starting to ask me, am I okay? Are people telling me that they're concerned about me? And even if we think about the denial piece, like you mentioned, which is huge, you may be denying that anything is happening. You may not be aware, but at a certain point, a break may come that slams it in your face to tell you there's a big issue here. Maybe you are crying uncontrollably. Maybe you are all of a sudden slipping on the job at work or in school and you're not able to handle things anymore. So sometimes if you are not able to have that awareness, then there's bigger signs that show you maybe not the way that they should be. And maybe there's something going on here. So you don't need to actually have a big diagnosis, right? It's the small things that start to build up.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can do a reality check. If you have a close friend, sometimes, because the way sometimes I would perceive things, especially when I was in a dark place, would be more dark. Is she looking at me funny? Am I seeing that? So having someone that you can do a reality check, am I seeing this correctly? Or, it's grounding to have kind of, and that could be the first person you talk to as well. If it's not a doctor, because you're a little scared, you don't want to admit that you have to see a doctor or a therapist, you can always talk to, I've been thinking this, do you think that's normal? Or do you think, and maybe somebody else will say, I think the same thing, so you're fine. Or somebody would say, that's a little concerning. Maybe we should find someone for you to talk to, so
Yeah.
that's a good reality check too. If you have somebody you can talk to like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just having a network, having a community, those things really help. It goes a long way. So let me ask this question around having access to mental health services. So you guys are experts in the space, you're professionals. What are some challenges or just some barriers that people might face? And this is not just immigrants, but people in general might face when trying to seek mental health services. And how do you go about navigating these changes? What are some things you can do, maybe from a systemic standpoint, to overcome these barriers?
I think one challenge is, let's say if we're talking about finding a therapist, for example, there could be a challenge in finding them to begin with. I know there's a lot of websites now, BetterHelp and things like that, that make it easier to find therapists. But there's also a challenge in finding the right fit for a therapist. And I think what a lot of people don't quite understand, or what they expect initially is, okay, it's taken me this long, but I'm finally here. I'm in front of the screen, or I'm in this person's office to have a conversation, and I'm uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good. And I don't feel like they understand me. And that is perfectly okay, because it may take you 3 times. I know for myself, it took me 3 people to find a therapist that felt like this was a good fit for me. So that's a big challenge that people face, where when they finally get themselves revved up enough to seek help, they're there with the person and it doesn't feel like it's a match. But it doesn't mean to stop. It doesn't mean to give up. You may actually have to keep trying a little bit more until you find the right fit of the person. Same thing like finding a new church. Any church you walk in the doors doesn't mean that's going to be your church home, right? You may have to found a little bit. And it's the same thing with mental health support too.
I think also understanding the concept of therapy. It's not a mentality of, I'm going to go in and they're going to fix me. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to be fixed. Hey, I admitted I have a problem. I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix. Not really how it works. In most situations, unless you're going to a specialized therapist who's going to target a specific problem and maybe make you do work, I would say like I know Nomoma does somatic therapy, which is so amazing, but so if you're not going to somebody who's targeting something, you might just be going in and having somebody that you can vent to, somebody who gives you an hour of their, you can just let it all, and there's no judgment. But I would say it's a process. You go in, it takes self-work, it takes reflection, it takes commitment, and it's not a fix-all. It's more just having the support to help you make your own decisions and your own opinions. I would also say one of the challenges around getting assistance would be insurance. Mental health services, at least privately, and over the years they've gotten better, but they can be very expensive. So obviously a lot of these telehealth services that sort of originated during the pandemic, when we ran into this huge, oh my God, mental health problems everywhere because we're all stuck in our homes.
Right.
There are a lot of telehealth services that are more affordable. I would say too, a lot of state services, if you can get, I live in Massachusetts, if you can get involved in mass health services, they do offer it. So you just have to do a little bit of back work to find out that you can find someone who's affordable. So I would say don't use it's not affordable as a complete excuse. You can find services, but a lot of the times insurance can be tricky.
Yeah. Now, the second part to that is people feel like they have to find a therapist who is just like them. So for example, like an immigrant, it's like, okay, I have to. So I'm going to use an Asian immigrant because I've seen things on TikTok where Asians complain like, hey, if I go to a therapist who's Asian, they're not going to understand my challenges or my frustrations because I've seen most of those videos. Is that a myth? Is that a misconception? Or it doesn't matter. I want you guys to educate us.
Yeah, I think it's a misconception, actually. My therapist, she is a Black woman, so there is a similarity in that sense, but she is a Black American woman. So she doesn't have necessarily the same background that I do in terms of having immigrant parents, being a Nigerian, understanding what it is like to live in both worlds in that sense. And I have friends who are Black and have white therapists and have wonderful experiences with them, because a therapist's job really is to be a mirror back to you. They don't actually have to understand every single thing that you've been through in your life or have gone through the same experiences to be able to reflect you. This is what I'm hearing you say, to be able to ask you more in-depth and deeper questions to help you connect some of your experiences back to childhood. Tell me about an example. Tell me about the first time that you felt this way, right? And bring you all the way back there so you can start to learn patterns about yourself and understand, why am I showing up in this way? And the therapist can give you tools to be able to shift. And so all of those skills that a therapist is trained in, they don't necessarily need to have the same cultural background. Is it a plus if they do? Yes, of course. But I would encourage people not to let that be a barrier to seeking therapeutic services or to beginning the process if the person across the screen is not an exact match like that.
And I would say for me, I always thought I need a female therapist. And when I left treatment, I had a female therapist. Now, for the past 10 years, I've been seeing a male therapist. That was not what I anticipated. But I met with several, when I moved back from New York, I met with several female therapists, and there wasn't a match.
Yeah.
And this therapist and I grew up very differently, culturally and otherwise. But I would say the personality match. So I would say don't judge a therapist based on, again, don't judge a book by its cover, because I would say do a preliminary session. See if there's, tangible, connection, because you could be totally surprised. Oh my God, this person totally gets me. We have lived such different lives, but I feel so validated. I feel so accepted. And truly, that's what it's about.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so for the individuals who struggle with the acceptance of seeing a therapist, because for some people it's like, I don't need to pay someone to go tell them my problems or, things like that, right? Again, I want you guys to educate us, because this is a knowledge series, right? So help us understand, at what point do you go from, what, I've tried everything I can, because there's some people who they realize that, okay, there's something wrong, I need help, I don't know, I no longer feel myself. And then, they start doing things, they start being intentional, they start making the effort to maybe go to the gym, maybe eat healthier, hang out with friends, things that would make them happy. And it might work for them, great, their outlook or their mood starts to get better. Whereas there's some people who they, do all the research online, take all the steps from Google, do the different things, and there's still no change, right? At what point do you say, okay, it's time to actually see a therapist, see a professional?
I have a great idea about that. I would say the way you look at therapy, because the way I try to look at therapy now, as opposed to being, I'm inadequate in some way, I have flaws, I need to go see. I am so invested in being the best version of myself.
Hmm.
And so many people, I'm just not that they're not, but I'm willing to sit across from somebody who can actually give me constructive criticism on what it is I do right and what it is I need to work on, because I want to be the best person. So in my mind, when I hear somebody attends a therapy session, I have such respect for them. I actually think it's a very mature mindset. Not that they're flawed, it's that they're so invested in healing, or professional development, whatever it is. It's no different than going to a career coach and saying, I am stuck. Can you please? But it's just the mindset that we have about it is so, skewed. So that's what I look at.
And I think there's an addition of sometimes you may not be the one to make the decision to go to therapy, but your body makes it for you. So like I said, I'm a breathwork facilitator, which is a somatic form of meditation where it's really about getting into your body and getting out of your mind. And I have a friend recently who has been going through a really tough time, and they have been very resistant to going to therapy. We've been trying to tell the person is not with it. And he's a male too. So that's also another additional piece of stigma of men getting mental health support, right? And he has come to it on his own because of all the symptoms that he's been experiencing. There's nothing else that he could do. So sometimes it's not even a decision. It's you're crying, you can't get out of bed, you can't function. When what is happening for you, if you're not doing therapy in a preventative way, when what is happening in your life is so skewed that it is messing up your daily functioning, at a certain point, you won't have any other option but to seek help.
True.
Somebody may have to come in and pull you out of your situation. So if it's not going to be you, your body's going to let you know, or somebody else is going to let you.
Oh my God, so true. So true.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm still tempted to ask you guys. So I don't have a therapist, and I always wonder, like, what is a therapy session? I mean, besides what we see on TV, what does it actually feel like? What actually happens in those sessions?
Well, I can explain for me. So when I was 19, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is something that actually has gotten a lot better with maturation. And I wouldn't completely say that I fit every part of that diagnosis anymore, but when I was younger, I definitely did. And part of the problem for me was by not having someone to actually offload my problems to, I was offloading to family, I was offloading to friends. And what it turned into was, it was making those relationships much more difficult. So by having a therapist and literally going in every week, I have notes every time I go in. This was hard this week. How could I have done this better? Like I'm literally the best hour of my week. And as soon as I see my therapist, it's like my shoulders go down. It's like, oh, it's so nice to see you. I can be around you and not be smiling all the time. I can be so normal. For me, it's a very validating experience, and it allows me to show up more positively in my other interactions, in my other relationships, because I've let it go. So that's how it feels for me.
Okay.
To add to that, what I've also seen is this is someone who can help you make connections of patterns that are happening in your life. So there's a lot of things that we hold on to from childhood that we don't even realize is still affecting us. And we just put it in a neat little box, tuck it in our pocket, put it in the closet, and don't even touch it again. But it is showing up in how we are interacting with people. And so having a therapist who's coming from an outsider's perspective that doesn't know you all too well, despite what you're presenting as, is able to help you go deeper and make those connections in a way that you may not have ever been able to see before, that even your friends, your family may not be able to see based off of their level of knowledge, and also maybe not even wanting to tell you about yourself. A therapist is not afraid to tell you about yourself and let you know, actually, I'm seeing this issue here, and let's work through it.
Yeah.
Another thing that therapy also supports you is, if you get comfortable, you begin to look forward to it, like Dina was saying. And let's say you have an issue with your boss at work, then you can kind of bring that to therapy to help you navigate how to deal with this situation. So now you actually have not a friend, but a support partner to be able to help you in certain settings, and you don't have to do it alone anymore. Someone is going to actually guide you through the way.
And I think a sign of a good therapist is actually somebody who doesn't always agree with you. You want to find somebody who's going to say, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. Or maybe you should look at this a little differently. My parents always joke around. They're like, oh, I think your therapist agrees with you on everything. I'm like, well, actually, he doesn't. Yep. He will tell me when I'm wrong. And I actually really appreciate it because it's from such an objective standpoint that it's like it allows me to leave the call and say, okay, maybe he's right. Maybe I did that wrong. Maybe I should change. And to give more of a personal example of something I recently said in therapy, going back to why do I act this way? Why do I do this? I said to my doctor, I said, why do I isolate so much when I'm struggling? And he said, because you think somewhere in your mind that you're a burden. And by isolating, you're doing other people a favor. They don't have to deal with you. And I was like, whoa, how did you know that? That's kind of what I'm thinking. But like, and it just like you have these moments, these epiphanies where things click and you're like, okay, I do that. How do I change it?
Okay. And so your therapist just understands these things by just asking questions.
Yeah.
Now, are therapists or healthcare professionals able to tailor self-care practices specifically to meet the unique needs of their patients? So when I say unique needs, so I'm talking about immigrants. Immigrants go through a lot of things, whether it's social pressure or discrimination or financial, downplay, like trying to find a job, all of those things, right? Not having friends, missing family back home, the cultural shock, all of those things. Like, is a therapist able to somehow provide, how do I say this? Like tailor self-care specifically for those needs?
They definitely are. Yeah, a good therapist would be able to do that. And also remembering that therapists have their own networks too, where if there's any areas that they don't have the full understanding about, they go to supervision with people who maybe have more experience, or people who are their peers in a therapeutic space that can give them that insight too. And it's also it's a dynamic process that flows with the client as well. So I think it's important for people to understand that you are empowered at any point to be able to tell your therapist what you need. Okay, yes, we've come up together with this self-care plan. Maybe it's working for me, maybe it isn't working for me, but the client as well has the ability to say, I need more of this, or I need less of this. Or also, hot take here, this relationship is also not working either. That's another aspect that I don't think is talked about enough. Knowing when maybe it's not a good fit anymore and I need to go on to find somebody else. So therapists have the knowledge, they have the networks to be able to support you in your journey. And if it doesn't work for you, you can always bounce and find
someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have the power.
No, go ahead. Finish that sentence.
You have the power. You have the control around how you want your mental health journey to look.
Right. You don't have to be stuck with someone who's not working for you, pretty much.
No, and I would even venture to say you have control of the therapy session. You kind of can tailor, if you actually do a little bit of prep work, you don't have to go crazy, but you can tailor exactly, because you have that 1 hour a week. So you can go in there and say, this is what I want to talk about. Let's talk about this. So, you can control everything, really. Just not exactly what they're going to say, but you can control the agenda.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. So let's talk a little bit about some long-term mental health strategies. So, just, how can individuals maintain long-term mental health? Ensuring that, because I don't know, but some people might not be able to afford, um, I mean, realistically speaking, and again, maybe I'm wrong, right? So maybe you guys need to school me. Like, is therapy supposed to be like a long-term thing, or is it just like 6 months? Like, what? How does that work? Or do you feel well and whole again, and you feel like, you know what, I'm gonna ditch my therapist and I start saving my money back? Like, how does that work?
I think it could be different for every person, but you'll hear a lot of people. This is what you'll typically hear in like the mental health world, that people were on medication, the medication was fine, and they felt good, and now they got off of it. And oh my God, I didn't need it anymore because I was fine. Yes, but you were fine because you were on the medication. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like this, and it's the same thing with therapy. It is a personal choice whether you continue, but I I would advise long term if you want, because it is doing something. If you're feeling better and you feel like you no longer need it, it's probably because it's doing something.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, to build off of that, I know friends who have been in therapy for the past 10 years and continue to
Hmm.
go. For myself, I've gone in chunks of time. Sometimes you're going when you're in transition, an immigrant moving newly to the country. Maybe being in therapy for 6 months is what works for you, works for your budget, and helps you get over the hump of the transition. Sometimes you recognize, actually, I like having this once a week check in with someone to help to make sure that I'm okay and help me with my goal setting and help to make sure that everything is working out for me. I want to be with them for a longer period of time. But I'm very big on what I may call preventative measures. At least in my life, I see it as preventative. So I have
Right.
a very solid morning and grounding routine that I use and that I support my coaching clients with as well. And it
Hmm.
will look different for everybody, but that could look like prayer, journaling, meditation, breathing, moving the body, making sure that you're getting healthy nutrients into the body, because all of this plays a part in it. And there are a variety of other things that you can add into it for yourself. But what I've noticed is for myself and clients, when that initial grounding is not happening, it's very easy to, and let me preface it by saying this is not if we're talking about additional mental health challenges and
Okay.
diagnosis, right? This is kind of at a baseline here, but the initial grounding is what gets you started for your day and that you can come back to and build upon, versus if you are not setting the intentions before you're moving about what you need to do, it's very easy to let the stress wash you away. And I think it's important to have those stress reducers built in from the top.
Yeah. So I like that because those things are the things you mentioned, like, praying, meditating, all of those things. I feel like those are things that you can do to not neglect your mental health. Um, those are some strategies to help reduce stress, maybe anxiety. Um, so is that all of it? So like, the prayer, the meditation, what else? Exercising, eating healthy.
And actually, for me, what I noticed more recently, which has been very redeeming, spirituality. I
Hmm.
think whatever it is that you believe in, knowing that, because when you have a mental illness, your mind almost becomes like, it's like you're in this dark tunnel. You can't really see full picture. Knowing that you are part of a greater design, you are part of a greater purpose, just you were made to be here, like all of that gives me comfort, because I still struggle. Mental illness is not something you fully ever I don't think recover from. It's kind of, it's not linear. Still have hard days, you still have, challenges. And I would say, relying on the knowledge that there is bigger, is been very helpful for me.
Yeah, yeah. And I would love to build upon that too. Something that supports me as well is, I know people talk about affirmations and they may
Mm.
buy into it, but I think the deeper part about using an affirmation is this subconscious reprogramming that you're trying to do with your brain. Your brain is a tool that you can use to help you move through this life. It doesn't necessarily need to run you. And I know our thoughts are running wild, always going around everywhere. But if it's already racing a mile a minute, let it be with positive things that are going to help you get what you want. For myself personally, I'm always repeating, I have an alarm on my phone. Everything is always working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. And it is because I
Yeah.
say it is because that's how God designed my life to be. And everyone has their own spiritual practices, right? But it's small things like that coupled with the community that we hope that you find, coupled with your other wellness practices, coupled with therapy, that it's not just a one-off thing, but it's a, let's call it a whole menu of items to choose
Yeah.
for that you implement in your life, and you start to create a system for yourself. And maybe you didn't need this system back home, but now that you are in a new environment, it requires you to actually show up differently and take care of yourself differently here.
Okay. So that's great. And then, as we go towards the end, we're getting towards the end of this session, right? I really want us to talk a little bit about coping mechanisms, right? Because I know that's different. So coping mechanisms, a lot of immigrants are coping with uncertainty, coping with their immigration status for the people who are undocumented. They are coping with job stability. Am I going to get fired? Especially those people who still work, who are in menial jobs where, you can get cut off at any time. So, what are some ways, coping mechanisms, like what kind of coping mechanisms could you put in place for, like, could immigrants put in place to just help manage their situations because they are in that, they can't help it. That's just the situation that they're in. So deal with it. How can you um still find ways to bring joy into your life or still maintain mental wellness even with those challenges that you're facing? Those challenges are still there as of now. You're experiencing it. So what are some things that they can do to just, cope?
There's something that Dina said earlier that really stood out to me around really recognizing what is within your control and what is outside of your control. If we're talking about immigration, you've done the paperwork, you're in this waiting period, there's not much more that can be done about that, right? If you are in a job searching process, you are applying on a regular basis, you are networking, you do what you need to do. Maybe you even have the means to work with a career coach. Beautiful. Do that for
Yeah.
yourself. But as well, do not lose sight of who you are in that process. The focusing on joy is something that I really focus on in the work that I do, because we are trying to be in the energy of what we're seeking. So if we
Yeah.
are sitting in the energy of nothing matters, everything sucks right now, I don't know what's happening, that's more of what we're attracting. If we can be in the energy of, let me get outside and take a walk because it's a beautiful day today. Let me put myself out there and maybe go to a community bicycling class or a run club or something like that. I've never done it before. Let me try. You don't know what actually may open up in that realm when you're putting yourself in a new environment, in a new energy to attract more of what you're looking for. But I think it takes more. I know it's easy to just kind of put your head down, focus, do what you need to do. It's important, but you cannot lose who you are in the process, because you'll never actually feel fulfilled. Even when you get to the destination, you may not feel fulfilled because you're so hyper focused on the thing.
And for me, because I had kind of like a 10-year hiatus in my professional life because I was sick for like 10 years. And there's this drive in me that sometimes is like, no, you have to do it. You have to do it now. The time is now. Like, you got to make something of yourself. And to some extent, like, again, realizing what is in your control, but like, if I turn off at the end of the day, I shouldn't feel bad about that. Like, you don't want to punish yourself because you haven't achieved the dream yet. You kind of have to learn to enjoy the journey a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think going into sort of that mentality of meditation, which actually is really hard for me because my mind goes sometimes, I can't do it. And then I get mad at myself because I can't do it. And it's like, self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think just learning to even have gratitude and practice the gratitude for the little things and remember that, like, yes, the destination is going to be amazing, but life is so short. I don't want to get there and realize I spent years in misery, but yes, I finally got where I'm going, where I wanted to be. So it's so important to, like, give yourself breaks, have work-life balance, appreciate the small things, and just sit back and, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Did
You
I
know?
feel like you're talking to me directly now? I feel like you're saying these things directly at Vivian, like, Vivian, you need to rest. You need to take it easy.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
because so many of us are juggling too many things at the same time. And it's like there's a race, and there really is not a race. It's like
You
nobody is
it's you versus you. It's not you versus anybody else. So
exactly.
your timeline is exactly how it's supposed to be. Where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be, right? The
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah.
And it's you versus you, but we live in a culture of competition.
Yeah.
And, especially if you're immigrating over here because you're looking for that better life and you're
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, now I'm against this person. They came over here, they made all this money. Why am I not making this money? Well,
Yeah.
you're not them. Your
Yeah.
time will come.
Yep.
Put in the hard work. But I've punished myself for years with the whole, I gotta be something. I gotta be something special, and I'm not special yet. And it doesn't make me sleep any easier at night. It
Yeah.
actually makes me sleep a lot easier when I can just say, "Oh, today was a good day," or "I smiled at a stranger," or "I made someone feel good." So don't punish yourself. Don't punish yourself. You'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll get
Yeah.
you know what?
Absolutely.
And you're already there. And you're already there.
there.
You,
Yeah.
there's no more that you need to be worthy. You're worthy.
Mm.
We can go on and on about this.
Oh, yes. I need you guys in my pocket because I have days where I feel horribly unworthy or like the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome is setting in. But, like, I think the other thing is just, I don't know if you guys ever followed David Goggins. I think he's absolutely amazing. He's this amazing Navy, like, SEAL and athlete, and his mindset is incredible. And he says something along the lines of, we're all kind of screwed up. Some people just hide it better.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you feel like you're the only one who's ever felt this way or ever, it's just not true.
Yep.
It's not. Some people might just be really good at hiding it,
Yep.
or we're all on social media. Everybody's only posting the glamour reel. You don't see what's behind. So just, understand what reality is. And
Yeah.
nobody has it all. Nobody has it all. So, and nobody's got it all figured out. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So many gems were dropped. You guys are amazing. And, so many things that you have said that I'm going to even take for myself. And to the immigrants out there listening, be patient,
Mhm.
give yourself grace. It's going to happen. Take one step at a time. Only focus on things that you can actually control. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so, I just want to say thank you so much to the both of you, Dina and Nama. And, I want you guys to just share with our audience how they can connect with you.
Yes, for me, you can find me on Instagram if you're on there at _essence of freedom. You can also, if you search my name on Google, then you should be able to navigate to my LinkedIn, Namoma Chukwumerija. You should hopefully see it because it is a mouthful, so you can find it that way. But really appreciate being here. Thank you all for listening.
And I will say I am on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. A little bit more of a professional, look on LinkedIn for sure. And it's just Dina Coughlin. And I will also say anybody who had the courage to leave their home and come somewhere else in the hopes of a dream, it's just so inspirational to me. So I give a lot of credit.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you saying that. And to everyone who is watching or who's going to watch this, we say thank you for joining us today at Resilient Immigrants. We believe that knowledge is the key to thriving and transforming lives. And we hope this discussion has provided you with valuable insights and inspiration. And this is something that we like to do. So to close out, I'd like each of you to state your name, your occupation, and the phrase I am proud to stand with resilient immigrants.
I can start. I am Namoma Chukwumerije. I am a life coach, and I am proud to stand with Resilient Immigrant.
My name is Dina Coughlin. I'm an aspiring speaker, author, and currently I am a recruiter for forensic psychologists, and I stand with Resilient Immigrants.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys are so amazing, and we're so happy to have you. Thank you. It's an honor to have you guys here with us today. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. We have come to the end of today's session. Thank you guys. See you later.
Bye.